Hey there, I'm Emily Guy Birken, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit. Because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? Today, I will be sharing my deep thoughts about The Princess Bride with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, and with you. Let's dive in.
Hey, it's me, Tracy. So there was something not quite right about my mic when we recorded this episode, but it's still worth listening to. My sister does most of the talking, and she's really smart. Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. Come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit.
So, Trace, tell me what you know about The Princess Bride and how you know it.
Oh man, I have seen The Princess Bride many times. I mean, in part because you were obsessed with it when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is such a quotable movie. Like I feel like there are a lot of moments in my life where like a Princess Bride quote comes up,
Mm-hmm.
in different
Mm-hmm.
scenarios, like waving goodbye to someone, have fun storming the castle,
Mm-hmm.
or what are the other ones? Like sometimes, like if my spouse and I are joking with each other, like sort of pretend angry, I'll say, "I'm not a witch, I'm your wife." Uh, and of course, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that movie is like the fodder for like childhood memories and experiences and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then like a few things that I learned about it, mainly, so Mandy Patinkin, who plays Inigo,
Mm-hmm.
is actually the first cousin of a former boss of mine.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. And so I learned a lot about Mandy's family
Mhm, mhm,
because my boss was his first cousin. Like they share grandparents. Anyway, I also learned later, like because Mandy Patinkin now has sort of an interesting social media uh
mhm,
presence. And so I've learned about like he imagined he imagined the six-fingered man was cancer when he's like
mhm,
so he could get the emotion in that
mhm,
scene when he
mhm,
confronts the six-fingered man as the person, the entity that killed his dad.
mhm,
So
mhm,
there are like little things like that I know about the Princess Bride, but to be honest, I have never taken the time to like dissect
mhm.
this for like what societal meanings it might have. So tell me, why are we talking about this?
Well, you are absolutely correct. I was obsessed with it. I think I watched it every Saturday and Sunday for years.
I know you wore
I,
out the VHS tape.
I, I literally wore out the VHS tape. Yes, and the VHS tape actually it was our aunt for either my birthday or as a like a holiday present had taped it for me off of HBO. Yeah, so I my ability to recite the entire film from beginning to end starts with the HBO promo that's at the very beginning.
But not with the little like
Yeah, the next step
baseball
or
video
yeah.
game thing.
Hmm.
That's what it does for me. Boop,
Yeah.
boop, boop, boop.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
Something that I find interesting about my love for this movie is that I know I didn't really get it entirely as a kid. So I watched it so many times I wore out the tape. I ended up buying the DVD. I watched it again and again, also in high school, probably a few times in college, and then there was a gap, and I saw it again when I was teaching high school English because it's something you can buy curricula for, and so I was like, yes, I do want to do that, and so I taught it to my students. And I realized there was this huge layer of things that had kind of gone over my head as a kid. And it's not that I didn't know it was funny. It's not that I didn't know that it was more than just a straight story. It's that didn't really matter when I was watching it. And I actually think that is not unusual and part of why it is so beloved and so enduring. And that's part of what I really want to focus on today. What it does in terms of storytelling that is, I think, unique. I can't think of anything else that does it this way. And how that actually, I think, is also connected to neurodivergence in a very interesting way. So that's where I'm coming from with this. Although I also am going to have a little sidetrack into the lack of female representation, the way that Buttercup is characterized, and its abysmal a score on the Bechdel test. So those are the things I'd like to talk about today.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm particularly eager to hear about the neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm. So I went back. So I rewatched the film last night, which is a delight. There are some things from your childhood you can't go home again. And this is not one of them. Now, there are aspects of, as I said, Buttercup that irritated me as a child and continue to irritate me as an adult. But overall, this movie holds up, and I feel like will continue to hold up forever. And I went and read some contemporaneous reviews at the time. One of them was Roger Ebert, for whom I have a great deal of affection, who said the way that he put it was that children will be wrapped in attention because of like the story, the straight story, whereas the adults will get the sly winks. And I think he got it in one. This story is on many, many levels. So it is both an homage to kind of fairy tales, but also a parody of fairy tales. But unlike a lot of parodies, it has a deep respect for the story itself. And so, you have Buttercup, and that is ridiculous, but they do not make it ridiculous. It is entirely possible to read that straight and not feel talked down to. Similarly, the R.O.U.S's, the rodents of unusual size, and other aspects of the story are very, very silly. And I was trying to think of how the actors play it too, because that's the other thing. They threaded this needle where on the one hand, all of the actors are aware of the fact that they're in a parody, but they also play it straight, but they also don't. So Wallace Shawn, who played Vicini, is chewing the scenery left, right, upside down, and backwards, but it works. And then you have Inigo, who has some of the best, funniest lines. You keep saying that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. But it is a truly emotional scene when he is fighting Count Rugen. So that's one of those things where I think we can thank Rob Reiner's direction, because he managed to bring out both the humor and the pathos without sacrificing either. And that I just think is very, very rare. So when a child is watching this, and I was a very literal child.
No, you're not a literal adult at all.
So some of the things that I want to make clear that I believed because of The Princess Bride, they talk about true love, and you can hear the capital T and the capital L when they talk about it multiple times. And I believed that was a thing. Like when like this is true love. Do you think it happens every day? You truly loved each other, so you could have been truly happy. Not one couple in a century has that chance. You know, death cannot stop true love. All it can do is delay it for a while. I thought that was a real thing that you could know that you had that truly would insulate you from the difficulties of the world. Now, this I put along the same lines as I think I told you recently that when I was a child, I thought a poetic license was something you could actually apply for.
Like carrying your wallet. I am allowed to mix that metaphor because I have a poetic license.
Yes. So very similar to that because of my literalism. And so that's where I get, in terms of my sense of neurodivergence, how this is a very neurodivergence-friendly movie. And here's why. So one of the things that I have, I was recently, as in within the last year and a half, got a diagnosis of ADHD. It was something that I found out is pretty typical among particularly middle-aged women, is their child will get diagnosed and they'll be looking at the symptoms going like, wait, that's not normal. Doesn't everybody do that? Which is what happened with me. The symptom that had me go like, oh yeah, I can't explain that any other way, was rewatching the same movie over and over again, or rereading the same book over and over again. And I was just like, that's me. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. And I can recall seeing a news story about a boy with autism who was basically nonverbal, except that he loved the movie The Lion King, and he would repeat the words in that, and that was a way that his father was able to connect with him. And everyone who I know who loves this movie did what I did. They watched it over and over again until they wore out the tape. And so the reason why I think this is a very neurodivergence friendly movie is it can be taken on many, many levels. So you can read it completely straight, in the way that many people who are neurodivergent do, who struggle with subtext, who struggle with social cues, who struggle with certain types of humor and sarcasm, because they take everything literally. So you've got that layer. But the movie, the writer, William Goldman, the actors, Rob Reiner as the director, none of them make you feel bad for taking it literally. They make it very clear that you are welcome to just watch this as an adventure and as a romance, and just enjoy yourself and enjoy the straight story. So there is no sense of talking down to the audience who is not able to see the layers. Then the fact that it is so quotable, makes it another thing that allows for, someone who is neurodivergent, who likes to revisit and revisit and revisits. It's very friendly that way. Then the fact that there are so many layers means that it rewards repeat viewings. So I, as a kid, could remember, I can remember the first time I realized like sleep well and dream of large women was a joke. Because again, I took that literally. And there was a point where I was just like, oh, I get why I said that. And that like, I had a little dopamine rush, like, oh, I get it now. And would not have been able to do that with a movie that I only watched once or twice. I had to watch it over and over and over again to really understand that, to get that. And so similarly, there is a scene where when Wesley is taken to the pit of despair, the albino, who is played by Mel Smith, who then goes on to be in Brain Donors, which is the updating of a Marx Brothers movie.
Yeah, I hope we'll get a chance to talk about that, actually.
I hope so, too. Much of my knowledge of actors is like 6 degrees of Princess Bride. So When the albino is Wesley wakes up, he finds the albino is like, putting disinfectant on his wounds. And he's like, so where am I? And the albino goes, the pit of despair. And then don't even think about trying to escape. And he's got this normal voice. It's another one where it took me multiple viewings to recognize the joke in there. And the gentleness with which the movie presents these things never made me feel stupid for not getting it before. I never at any point felt like, oh my God, were people laughing at me that I wasn't laughing at that? It was entirely a type of discovery for me to be able to recognize these jokes, this winking at the audience, the subtext, and all of those things at my own pace and without in any way feeling shame for not getting it. And that, I think, has a lot to do with why it is so beloved. I mean, it's not just a funny movie. It's not just a swashbuckling romance. It's not just a lovely fairy tale. It's not just a story of fathers and sons or grandfathers and grandsons. It's also something. It's a very gentle introduction to how stories are told that allows you and rewards you for examining deeper.
That's nice. There's something, as you're saying that, one of the things I'm thinking about is Vicini. And like, because he's sort of like this hyper rational, but he's so ridiculous. And so even within the universe of the story, like, to your point, like the sort of hyper rational person who might laugh at you for not getting the subtext is laughed at. Yes. He's absolutely ridiculous in this, in the universe of this movie, So like, I'm even thinking about like some of the ways that Inigo and, Fezzik, thank you. The way that they interact in their friendship, like they rhyme together, which Vicini hates, Stop that rhyming now, I need it. Does anybody want a peanut? Like, it's so silly. But there's clear camaraderie and affection within the silliness that the hyper-rational guy hates, and we as the audience kind of hate him for hating it. And so to your point about it being kind of open and welcoming and like making space for the deeper, like, no, of course you're not going to be made fun of. I mean, like, our favorite thing is to rhyme with one another.
Yes. And that's that gets to another aspect of it, that Inigo and Fezzik are not in any way shamed for the things that they lack. So, except by Vicini. So,
right, except by Vicini.
Fezzik is not an intellectual giant. But that does not matter to Inigo. They are best friends anyway. And Inigo loves to help him, like prompt him to have him rhyme, because it makes Fezzik so happy. And Inigo is, he talks about he has no gift for strategy. And he's like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. Like, I am persistent, so I know how to be persistent. I'll find the man in black. The man in black will be my strategist. And Fezzik's like, all right, I've got $65. You can have it. We'll do whatever we need to do with it. That is another aspect of it. There is no sense of shaming.
Even for mistakes, not just what's lacked, but even for mistakes, right? Like when Fezzik finds Inigo drunk, and Inigo says, we said we go back to things go wrong, we go back to the beginning. This is the beginning. Like, this is where I was when Vicini found me. And there's no, like, Fezzik doesn't judge him. He just takes care of him. And I mean, kind of a harsh way with the hot water and the cold water.
But it works. It is effective.
And not with any shame or judgment.
Yes. Yeah. He does not in any way make him feel bad for things having gone wrong. And that is just, that's lovely. Similarly, once Wesley kind of joins their trio, they work together very, very well. Just, that there's that lovely scene where, he immediately wakes up, I beat you each apart. I'll take you both together. I was like, how did you recognize them that quickly? There's no grogginess. You went, where am I, in the pit of despair? Anyway, but, he's like, I don't know how we'll do this. And Fezzik is just like, but you're wiggling your finger. That's fantastic. So there is something just so...
Your brawn, his steel, and you think a little finger wiggling?
Yes. So, but that kind of openness is very lovely. Now, I do want to say, and this is something that bothered me even as a child, Buttercup does not get the same treatment. So, and some of this comes from William Goldman's novel. In the novel, she's not very bright. They did a little bit in the movie, and Robin Wright is fantastic. Where she has some spunk. So the fact that she jumps in the water, although I believe that's in the novel as well, she jumps in the water to try to get away. Like, that is very brave. She when she says, "Do you promise not to hurt him? I'll go with you," she is exercising the only kind of power that she has ever had. But when they're in the fire swamp and he's explaining to her about, how he's Dread Pirate Roberts and now he's going to retire and pass the name on to someone else. And he's like, is everything clear to you? This is a choice. This is a directorial choice. They have her look confused before she falls into the lightning sand. And what he's explained is not difficult to understand. And I remember being like annoyed by that as a kid, because I'm like, how is she not going to understand that? What's to be confused about? And then that is immediately followed by her being completely useless in the R.O.U.S attack, which is another directorial choice that was not necessary.
Right.
They
could have tried to whack him.
Yeah, they have her take that branch and like she's like pushing it away with it instead of like whacking it over the head. Would not have changed the scene or the story at all. So,
though, it's interesting. What is interesting, to your point about Buttercup, is that I think that, no, I'm certain that hers is the only interior that we see, with the dream that she has with the old lady. Boo! Bow down to her, bow to the queen of filth, the queen of
rubbish, the queen of putrescence.
Yeah, that's the only interior thought, like mindscape that we see of any of these characters, which is sort of interesting. I mean, I actually don't know what to do with that, given what else you're pointing out. I mean, although having that dream is what sends her to Humperdinck to say she doesn't want to, if he makes her marry him, she will kill herself. And he does the 4 fastest ships thing. But I don't know what I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I do think it's worth noting that in the whole movie we get an interior scene from one character, and it's the one who is, to your point, the least fleshed out. Like, she really is just a prize in many ways.
And that's like, I am again somewhat conflicted about Buttercup as a character, because when she says, and the reason I say you're a coward is because of the slimiest weakling ever to walk the earth, like, my heart sings. I'm like, yes, give it to him. It reminds me of the story of Esther, from where, if listeners aren't familiar, the story of the Purim holiday. Esther was Jewish, but she married the king.
Ahasuerus.
Who was the king of Persia, who was not Jewish, and so and long story short, all the Jews were supposed to die. And so she wouldn't go to him directly and say, hey, I'm your beloved queen. I'm one of the people who's going to die. Can you fix it? She had to like work around it because she was so afraid of angering the king. Now, obviously, like this is, a silly movie, but, that Buttercup says to his face, to the most powerful man in the country where they live, you are a slimy weakling and you cannot hurt me, is like, that's amazing. But we don't get to spend any time on that. And we don't get to see that for the bravery that it is, in part because Humperdinck is a ridiculous character. I mean, his name is Humperdinck. But also like Vizzini, he is puffed up to be ridiculous, in a way. And, as is Count Rugen, but Count Rugen is ridiculous, but also scary. I mean, he is lethal. So it's an interesting scenario. Now, as I mentioned, this movie does not pass the Bechdel test, which, as a reminder, it's the test from Alison Bechdel, which is, does it have two female characters? Do they both have a name? Do they talk to each other about something other than men? So there are two female characters that are named. There's Buttercup and Valerie, who is the Miracle Max's wife. They do not speak to each other. Yeah, they do not speak to each other. Buttercup has maybe she's in the room when the queen says it was a very strange wedding, but she doesn't actually talk to her. And she also speaks to the booing woman, but that's about Wesley.
And the booing woman doesn't have a name.
Yes, and the booing woman doesn't have a name.
Neither does the queen.
Yeah, and neither does the mother. Although, I mean, neither does Fred Savage or Peter Falk in the Frame story. Right. If this were to be made today, and I don't think it, like people have talked about, we should remake it. Like, no, do not remake this. But if this were to be made with different sensibility towards sexual politics than what William Goldman and Rob Reiner had in 1987 and what William Goldman had in 1973 when he originally wrote the book, I believe that like Vizzini, Inigo, and Fezzik might be a more diverse cast.
Yeah. I imagine Inigo as like a really live woman. I think that could be amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
So, and then, there's the fact, but some of this goes back again to the fact that it's a fairy tale, but that Wesley and Buttercup are both, blonde, blue-eyed.
Yeah. Also, like, why do they love one another? Like, I remember watching it as an adult and being like, how is that true love? I mean, she makes him do stuff for her, and that's hot. I mean, it's not just hot because it's not true lust. It's true love. Yeah. Like, I don't.
That's one of those things where I think that is both part of the homage to the original, like to fairy tales, because fairy tales don't require any kind of realism when it comes to love. And then I think it shows the genius of William Goldman's writing in that, okay, yeah, let's get through that. Murdered by pirates, onto the story.
Right. With the Columbo and Kevin. That's not their names. Walking Fred Savage.
But that's good. Yeah. But that's, some of that has to do, and if I can't remember if you've read the book or not.
Yeah, I at least read some of it, where he actually found it and it was really boring, and so it's like the good parts version.
Yes. Yeah. So some of that, like, the falling in love part and how like quick it is, and the fact that, when he said as you wish, what he really meant was I love you, was a send up of that aspect of fairy tales. But it was also, and this is why I consider Goldman a genius, it also let him off the hook. So like he could like lean into the send up, and the movie plays it a lot more straight than the book does, in part because they just don't have the time for there's quite a bit more that happens early on in the book. But it's a similar thing. It's like, all right, just take it as a given. They're in love. I mean, look at them. How could they not be? And then, all right, on to, murdered by pirates and good stuff. And that's another aspect of this, that as someone who wants to consider myself a storyteller, who like does do creative writing, I feel like this is a really interesting thing to be part of my like literary DNA, because it taught me you can skip to the stuff you know how to write.
It's really interesting too in thinking about it that way as sort of the storytelling DNA, because I find that sort of the frame and where the frame starts to intersect, I find those moments really, really fascinating. I think it's in part because of this movie, like in the screeching eels. And then like Peter Falk, she doesn't get killed or whatever it is that he says, like you were looking worried. And then he goes in and I keep want to say Kevin. Fred. So Fred Savage is like, you read that part already. Like, so like, there's like a little, like you're in the wrong spot. Like that kind of interruption of the story with the frame, I find really, really fun and satisfying. And I think in part because of this movie.
Yes, it's that creation of a frame narrative. It's another one where, so I spend quite a bit of time thinking about story construction in a way that I think, someone who wasn't an English major, someone who doesn't, or who didn't teach English, someone who doesn't try to write him or herself, doesn't necessarily do. And it's interesting because like, if you rewatch the same film over and over and over again, you can start to see where the strings are being pulled in a way that you don't notice. And it is really seamless in a lot of ways with this film, which again is part of what makes it so great. But those interruptions, they allow for things that would be difficult to handle without them. So by having now I want to call him Kevin, by having Fred Savage interrupt when the day of the wedding arrived and she now met her subjects as her queen, and Kevin interrupts and is just like, wait, no, that's not right. That you got it wrong. Yeah. That gives you stakes that the story itself doesn't necessarily have. So, you are raising the stakes because you're breaking this little boy's heart, in addition to the stakes of this fairy tale. That's amazing. It is amazing.
That's a really, really smart point. Yeah. I think more than that, it's not just that you're breaking that little boy's heart, but it's part of the dramatic irony that I love, because we, the viewers, are with Fred Savage, right? And we're like, oh, right. Yeah. He had, so like, there's this like a projection too, that maybe we, just as viewers, if just the sort of baseline story, the story inside the frame, we might be like, oh, well, I guess okay, well, let's see where this goes. But when he said it, then we also are justified in being like, yeah, that's not the way the story is supposed to go. It's like, it kind of validates what we might have tamped down in just watching the story.
Exactly. Yes. So Goldman and Reiner have created this audience proxy.
In Fred Savage. Yeah.
In Fred Savage. And we've created, it's not unusual to have like a narrator, but we have a narrator with a specific kind of agenda. With Peter Falk. So when there's the point where Fred Savage goes like, well, who gets Humperdinck? Who kills him at the end? Is it Inigo? Who? And Peter Falk goes, nobody does. He lives. And he's like, what did you read me this for? That's not fair. And he's like, well, life's not fair. That was a very important through line in the book. which William Goldman actually wrote because his daughters requested a bedtime story, and one asked for a princess, one asked for a bride. And so he put them together. He goes through multiple times and has S. Morgenstern at the end say, like, if there's anything I want you to know, it's life's not fair and true love's the greatest thing in the world, except for maybe cough drops.
I don't think I read the whole book because I would remember that.
So it's interesting that's the message that Peter Falk wants to give, is that life's not fair. And that's a message of this story, even though this story gives, as I was saying, it is so open to people wherever they are.
I'm not sure that the movie does give that message.
No.
I mean,
Humperdinck lives, and that's not fair.
Yeah, sure, but he's humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that moment where when they reconnect, and Fezzik has the four white, there they were, four white horses.
Four white horses.
And I thought, there are four of us. If we ever find a lady,
hello, lady.
It's like, they like manifest it. It's like freaking magic. And they ride off into the sunset. And I recall in the book, they ride off into the sunset, but then one of the horses loses a shoe, and Wesley
relapses.
And then all these terrible things happen. But we don't see that in the movie.
Yeah.
We just ride off, and then we get Peter Falk giving us a wink, as you wish. Mm-hmm. So I think the movie version actually is a little more magical than
more gentle.
There.
Having watched this after losing our dad, I think I might be seeing that a little bit more, just in that scene where Inigo goes like, offer me anything I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, and then he kills him.
But that doesn't make it fair, and that doesn't make it better.
No, and I think in the character of Inigo, there's something very specific, a specific message there. Even when he says, I've been in the revenge business so long, I don't know what else there is to do. Like the fact that he has completely created his identity on his hatred of this other person has in some ways erased his father as well.
Yes.
So I think in the character of Inigo specifically, we do get some of that. But even that, there's like this consolation prize. Have you ever considered piracy? I think you'd make a wonderful Dread Pirate Roberts. So like there's still an openness and a gentleness and like, we'll figure it out.
I suppose that's true. You are right. You're right there. I have, and this is me like really overthinking things. At the beginning, when Peter Falk says, like, it's a book, back when I was a kid, television was called books. And this is a special book. My father used to read it to me when I was a child, and I used to read it to your father. And today I'm going to read it to you. Where's Fred Savage's father? I have wondered that multiple times. And, again, some of this has to do with the fact that, since 2013, I have not had a father. And I feel that loss acutely in terms of my own sons not having a grandfather figure to read to them when they're sick. There is an undercurrent of unfairness and reality, even within the gentleness of this film. But it's it is gentle. It is magical. It does. It is reassuring, even in all of that. That even if someone is mostly dead all day, they can be brought back, and that true love really and truly does prevail even over death.
Yeah, maybe that's part of like the fact of the frame and the escape. Maybe that's part of the message is because I think. There is certainly a sense of loss that each of these characters carries. The good guys, anyway. And Wesley and Buttercup do reclaim what they lost. sort of. But the others don't and can't. They find other things, because that's how, death works. Outside of the frame of the story where you can be mostly dead all day.
There's only one thing you can do: go through his pockets and look for loose change.
Yeah. It's an interesting lens to look at it through. Because Buttercup, actually, like, coming back to her, there's not a whole lot there. She's pretty unidimensional, but even within the single dimension, she's lonely, grieving. Like, nothing brings her joy except for her daily ride. I mean, she's doing this. I think Esther's a great comparison. She doesn't have much of a choice. It's not like a peasant girl can say no to the prince. So she makes the best of it. I mean, I think with a different lens, this actually could be quite a dark story.
Yes.
And the woman who calls her the queen of putrescence is like, that's not just a dream. And also it's completely out of line, because what choice did she have?
Yes. Well, and that's the scene when she goes, "Do you promise not to hurt him?" That's one of the reasons why I want to, like, the movie takes that at, like, immediately cuts her down.
Yeah.
When she said,
we are men of honor, lying does not become us.
Yes. And she says, "I lost you once, and I like, it nearly killed me. I can't do it again when I could save you." And, like, she is exercising the only power she has, which is very little. But, that's like, it is admirable. It is admirable that she's doing that. And, like, it, there is no way that they could win against all of those knights, who had, like, longbows, or crossbows.
Right. It was her action that kept them from dying.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah. And kept her from seeing him dying in front of her too, which, honestly, like, in another director's hands, it could just be like, she just couldn't see it happen, and maybe this would be easier, knowing that it's unlikely that he'll keep his word. But also, based on, the way that the prince talks, he talks as if my word is my bond. So I think that we need to kind of give Buttercup a second look. There were a few years ago, I rewatched The Shining, the 1980 Stephen King movie that Stephen King hates. And one of the things he said about it was that he hated the way Shelley Duvall played Wendy Torrance, saying it was a misogynistic portrayal. And the thing is, if you watch that film, Shelley Duvall at every stage is doing the best she can with what she has. And she is always prioritizing the well-being of her child and her husband in that order. And so I was kind of thinking of her as, like, an undercover nasty woman, because she looks like, and I can see why King thought of her as like a misogynistic portrayal. And she does not strike you as a very bright person in that movie. But that doesn't mean she's not strong, and that does not mean she's not capable, and that doesn't mean she's anything other than a heroine.
She certainly wins in the end.
She does. She gets Danny out of there, and she gets herself out of there. And, I mean, considering what she was up against, that's pretty amazing. She was terrified, but who wouldn't be? I feel like Buttercup has a similar, there's a similar look that we can give to Buttercup in The Princess Bride, where, like, even with the way that the story is directed, even with the sexual politics of 1973 in how she was originally written, and in 1987 in how she was directed, Robin Wright was directed to play her, there is still this core of strength within this unidimensional character that we can admire, even while we wish, like, seriously, Rob, couldn't you have her beat the R.O.U.S over the head? I mean, like,
right. I mean, because actually in the interactions with Humperdinck, she shows quite a bit of strength. You know, when she says all but your four fastest, right? Like, she holds him to what he said in ways that actually are quite brave. I think it's a lot easier to just let that go, but she doesn't. So I think you're right. I do. I think you're right.
And that's something, one of the things, as I was kind of reading reviews and stuff like that, I read two things that were kind of negative towards The Princess Bride. Both were from women. Both were saying that they kind of cringe at the portrayal of Buttercup because it is kind of misogynistic. And neither of them were wrong. I think that they're correct. But I think there's a way to kind of forgive the movie for it. And there's a way to read Buttercup as a strong woman. And when was it? It was in, I think, 2018 when Wonder Woman came out. Someone had a meme going about how Gen X women grew up to see their childhood princesses grow up to be generals, because Carrie Fisher playing Princess Leia and then becoming General Organa, and then Robin Wright being Princess Buttercup and being a general, one of the Amazon generals in Wonder Woman. And there, you know, it's not like, you know, Princess Buttercup is not the Amazon general. Like, this is an actress. But I do like looking at the fuller context of even just an actor's choices, you know, that she does go from like a pretty object who does have some moments of strength to taking these roles where she plays the president of the United States, where she is an Amazon warrior, where she is, you know, all of these interesting, fascinating things. And that is something that I appreciate Robin Wright for, I will say.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that also, though, even within just the boundaries of The Princess Bride, the fact is Goldman, Reiner, they were misogynistic. They were sexist. There were sort of unhealthy gender norms, and that's the society that they were in. It's not like they invented those negative things, right? So they were reflecting back the society. And so within that, like, us noticing the small moments of power that are offered when they are seized, when those opportunities are seized, small as they may be, that is worth celebrating. I think that's also like worth noting. Like, I think you're right. We can look at the big context, and that is useful. Robin Wright is not Princess Buttercup. And also, like, they're inextricably linked. And even within just the boundaries of this movie that you brought to have deep thoughts about, that is the nature of being female in the world for most of human existence. And so recognizing that the opportunities are small, but that doesn't mean they're not there, nor that we can't take them. I think that is really worth noticing and celebrating, so that when the bigger opportunities come, we recognize them and know what to do.
Yes. I will say, hearing you say that, I'm thinking about the only other named woman in the movie, Valerie, Miracle Max's wife. She takes power in a similar way.
She totally does. I mean, she and in the ways that she's like that sort of nagging, that is the kind of power that women were given, were allowed to hold.
We're allowed to take. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, it's done to comedic effect, but it works. So yeah. All right. So let me see if I can synthesize quickly, and then some deep thoughts about stupid shit. Okay. So I'm hearing there's something really lovely about the many layers of this movie that don't just invite or allow, but actually reward multiple viewings, without judgment, without shame, which is really, in your experience, neurodivergent friendly. In terms of story structure, the frame structure of Fred Savage and Grandpa Columbo was really useful to raise the stakes and as an audience proxy, which I personally had known the audience proxy because I'm so attuned to dramatic irony, but the raising the stakes, that's really, really interesting. And I love that insight from you. And the gender norms are yucky, but also real. And even within those yucky norms, we see real bravery on the part of Princess Buttercup and Valerie, Miracle Max's wife.
Who's not a witch, she's his wife.
Who's not a witch. She might be a witch, but she is his wife. And did I miss anything? In terms of like big takeaways you want to make sure that we leave with our listeners here?
Just the fact that both humor and pathos lie within this film in a way that is amazing, and is because I feel like pretty much all of the actors, with possible exception of Wallace Shawn, who just was scenery chewing there, but all of the actors were able to marry those two types of emoting in a way that is just unique. I cannot think of another film that does that, where you feel genuine concern, pathos, like pride for the like the scene between Inigo and Count Rugen, while also having so many winks to the audience and so much humor and so much slyness. It's sweet and sly at the same time, and you'd think you can't do that, but they do.
Right. It's an absurdism, which is neither ridiculous, like clowning, nor is it like Kafka or, sort of like theater of the absurd, where you're just like, what the heck is happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it a wrap. Those were our deep thoughts about this, right?
That's some deep thoughts about stupid shit. Although I suspect some of our listeners will be like, how dare you call The Princess Bride stupid shit?
And just as a reminder, we don't think it's stupid shit.
No.
It's all the other unwashed masses who mistakenly believe.
Yes. It's a movie for kids. So next time, what are you going to be telling me about?
Oh, next time I'm going to share with you my deep thoughts about Ghostbusters, which is the VCR tape that I wore out.
Yes. The walls in the 57th precinct are bleeding.
How do you explain that? That's the one.
Yet another very quotable movie from our childhood. All right. See you then.
Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Deep Thoughts is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. You can help keep us overthinking. Support us through our Patreon with a link in the show notes. Leave a positive review so others can find us. And share the show with your people. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?